Hello, I'm John. When people have doubts about God, they often hope and pray for a sign. If God would just reveal himself to me, if I could just hear his voice just for a second, then I would know he exists. I've been lucky enough to preach quite a bit, and like most preachers, when I saw Bishop Michael Curry's preach his sermon at Harry and Meghan's wedding, I realised how poor my preaching was. If you haven't managed to see it, it's brilliant. However, the real revelation that I got from that sermon probably wasn't the message that Bishop Curry intended. I'd been invited to go along to a friend's house on that day for a little party to celebrate the wedding, on the condition that I remained silent during the ceremony, as my host really wanted to hear every part of what was being said. I thought that was a tall order for me, but I agreed anyway, and off I went. When the sermon came on, I was blown away by the strength of his message, by the power of the words he chose to describe love and the power of love. Secondly, I was also really impressed by his delivery. He was full of life, full of love, and so clearly fired up by the Spirit. I felt God was speaking through him. And I had always thought that when preaching, if your message was powerful enough and your delivery was faultless, then no one could fail to hear. About 4 or 5 minutes into the bishop's sermon, some of those I was watching with became fidgety and were chatting. They were making comments about how this was so untraditional for a royal wedding and how, well, this is what they're like in America, you know. And a slight embarrassment at how charismatic he was. I was being really good and actually silent because I was hanging on the bishop's every word. But some of my fellow guests had become distracted. They were commenting on the faces of some of the royal family, thinking, oh, you know, this isn't what they're used to. And I felt as though my friends were becoming just embarrassed by the passion with which this message of love was being conveyed. I realised that it's not just the quality of the message and the passion of the delivery that is needed, but there really is an important third item that is needed for the perfect preach. And that is that the person you're talking to needs to be able to hear what you're saying. I thought long and hard about the reaction of my friends on that day and what the barrier was for them to hearing God's words in that sermon. And I think it was what they chose to use to hear it. If I was to tell you that the capital of South Sudan was Juba, you would know that the capital of South Sudan is Juba. You would know that because you have listened to my words, your brain has judged if that's useful or likely to be true, and then stored that information, and you will now be able to recall that if anyone ever says to you, what's the capital of South Sudan? It's a really legitimate way of hearing. If you were to ask me if I know my children love me, I can give you a really clear answer that they do. But I've heard that information in an entirely different way. Not just because they tell me they love me, even though I insist that they do on regular occasions, but because their love is in my innermost being. I know their love through their hugs and their kisses. I know their love through the kindness that they show me. And I know their love through their care for me. But more than that, I absolutely know that love because it's in my heart. When I give my problems up to God, I rarely get a clear sense of words in response, but I do have a really clear sense in my heart of the path that God has set before me. The people I watched the royal wedding with were lovely, lovely people, but I wish they had been able to hear Bishop Curry's words with their heart. I wish they'd been able to lay down the judgments they were making through using their ears. Because when God talks to us, he talks to our very being. We don't need to work out if it's worth hearing. We know it is.